Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, Super Tuesday further defining the match for the White House as we gear up for Election Day 2024. And back in the Sunshine State, Governor Ron DeSantis visits Miami as that city attempts to prevent the spring break problems of last year. Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly, unbiased look at the top stories affecting the state with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. We want to take a moment to say hello to our many viewers watching as they do every week on stations throughout the state, including stations in Jacksonville, Gainesville, Orlando, Panama City, and elsewhere. I am joined today, as I am every week, by my co-host, Emmy award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Doctor, welcome.
Great to be here again, Frank.
All right, Super Tuesday, now in the rearview mirror, the results coming on the heels of a U.S. Supreme Court decision that will allow former President Donald Trump to remain on the ballots in several states, which had attempted to remove him for his activities leading up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. But first and foremost, Trump notching a bunch of victories in the primaries yesterday, Super Tuesday, and as we go to tape, Nikki Haley dropping out of the race. So let's start with that.
Well, Frank, I think Nikki Haley has played a big role here. Number one, she's shown that there's a problem within the Republican Party. She distinguished herself quite well, I believe, but she shows that there's a lot of people in the Republican Party who voted for her and will not vote for Donald Trump. That's a real problem for the Republican Party, because how do they start the general election with Republicans on the sidelines voting for someone else other than Donald Trump? Now Biden, of course, has his issues, but this is the biggest issue for Donald Trump and the GOP going forward. So she has demonstrated a real issue within the party.
Where does she go from here? Does she endorse Trump, or does she possibly become the candidate on the No Labels party? What does her future look like?
I don't think she goes to No Labels. I'm not sure No Labels is going anywhere, actually. I'm not sure No Labels goes, but I'm not sure she knows where she's going.
If for some reason Donald Trump drops out for whatever reason, is she the heir apparent at this point?
No.
Why not?
I don't think so.
See, that surprised me.
No.
That surprised me.
No.
Why not?
Because I don't think the Republican Party overall is going to go with her. I think the people who voted for her really do like her. But the people who are behind Donald Trump, if Trump ever dropped out, are not going to be Haley people. So I think that someone else would emerge if Donald Trump had to drop out.
And as we go to tape as well, we find out that Mitch McConnell is going to endorse Donald Trump for president. This is the same Mitch McConnell who went on the floor of the Senate after the Capitol riot, the attack on the Capitol, and said that Donald Trump was responsible for this. Here we are 4 years later. He says he's my man.
Well, Mitch really is a Republican person. He wants the Republican Party to be successful. Let's face it, he doesn't like Donald Trump. He has a real issue with him.
They haven't spoken since that moment.
That's right.
They haven't spoken in almost 4 years.
That's a good point. That's true. I use the word cagey when I ever think of this guy. He's really quite good at making sure that everyone in the party goes in the same direction, and he's doing that now.
He is the consummate politician in that he knows how to play the game and keep his options open.
He's very
good.
No
doubt about it.
Very good at that.
I mean, whether you like him or dislike him, he does know how to work the political.
Yes, he's got a lot of talent in that area, yes.
All right. The Supreme Court, as you know, made a decision that will allow President Trump to remain on the ballot in Colorado and elsewhere. Here's my issue with that. Maybe you can respond. The Supreme Court says, hey, the states can't decide this. They can't decide whether they want a candidate on the ballot or not. But when it comes to abortion, yeah, the states can decide that. So there seems to be a dichotomy here, which is tough to explain.
Well, I think
I might have stumped you there.
You actually are stumping me, because it's a hard question to answer. You're giving me a tough one here, Frank. And I think that what the Supreme Court is really thinking about is chaos. If they had the states do this, what would happen to the election? The election would actually be a farce. So the Supreme Court had to make a decision going for a federal law, saying that this is the way it has to be in every state. And I can understand their thinking there, but to your point, I think you're correct. There seems to be some kind of misconception here at the court.
All right. Well said. All right, time now for one of our regular segments, a commentary from Dr. Bart Rossi that we call the Rossi Rant.
And Frank, I'd like to go off today on this bill that's being proposed. It looks like it might be coming into law that says counselors can go into public school. That is, religious counselors can go into public schools. And on the surface, maybe some people think this might be a good idea to help kids with their problems. But we've been talking about this for the last few weeks. And what hit me this week is now that the Satanic Temple is interested in also participating. They would like their counselors to go into the schools. So it brings up the point that I think we made last week. Who's deciding exactly which religious group goes into the public school? And is this, once again, Sunday school in the public schools? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And where this is going is really bizarre. Are we to have rabbis in the school? Nuns? Are we going to have born-again Christians in the school? Are we going to have Mormon counselors? It seems to me that we are really having a problem in many areas of our country. But this is a rule, a law, a bill that makes no sense to me as a psychologist. Why not licensed psychologists, licensed social workers, people that are talented in this area? That's my thought on this one, Frank.
And that is your rant. I think what you're saying is it's a slippery slope.
It doesn't really make any sense.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Coming up, the Florida legislature wraps up its 2024 session with some wins and losses for the governor when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla. I'm joined by political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. The state legislature has wrapped up its latest legislative session with a mixed bag of wins and losses for Governor DeSantis. Now, we know DeSantis vetoed a bill that would have banned minors under the age of 16 from popular social media platforms, although late in the session, legislators were looking to revise and revive that bill, possibly lowering the age to 14. Right. We have discussed this. I don't know how you monitor this and stop kids from opening social media accounts. And shouldn't that be the domain of the parents?
Well, you use the right term, Frank. Monitor. Well, isn't that the role of the parent? You're right. Yeah. I mean, it seems to me as a psychologist that, we're getting into laws and we're banning this, we're banning that, but what about promoting parents and what their responsibility ought to be?
Well, the governor has said in the past many times that parents should have more of a say in how their kids are brought up. That's why they want to change the curriculum in school and so on. But in this particular case, the state is stepping in and saying, no, we'll handle this one.
But I thought Republicans were for less government. Mm-hmm. This seems to be like more government intrusion. And I think that there are a lot of people in the Republican Party having an issue with the particular bill. I don't think it's looked upon as very, very positive.
Now, going to tape, it's still a possibility because the session ends on Friday. Mm-hmm. We tape a bit earlier in the week. You think this happens or it doesn't happen?
I think it's probably going to happen one way or the other. And again, I think it's just more state government that is a question mark. And I think the governor probably is sensitive about this because he vetoed the first one. But it's an issue that's not a good one for there's no good optics here. Let's put it that way.
I agree with you. Okay, let's discuss Governor DeSantis in Miami. This is a story. Spring break happens in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Mm-hmm. There has been violence in the past, public drinking activities that, Miami's a big city. Fort Lauderdale is a big city. But even with that, it takes a lot of police and monitoring, using that word again, to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. They're not going to put up with this. And some of the business owners say, hey, you know what? That's our bread and butter. This is a time of year where we make some money in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Your thoughts on that? The governor wants to make sure that it's controlled this year and it doesn't get out of hand.
Well, let's give the governor some credit here for an organized plan. Let's hope it's an organized plan to deal with all the kids coming down here. That makes sense. I mean, I think it really should be up to the city to provide the right, legal, backdrop for this. Mm-hmm. But I think if the governor's going to make a move in this direction and it's going to be an organized plan, okay, it makes good sense.
All right. That's your vote. Hey, let's talk about Matt Gaetz. He was in Tallahassee this week, for lack of a better description, schmoozing. Now, we've discussed that Governor DeSantis came off the presidential trail, dropped out. It came back a little weakened. The legislature is not exactly going along with everything he says, nor what the Republican Party wants. Matt Gaetz, I believe, and he has denied it, but he has indicated that he might want to run for governor in 2026. And this was a way to sort of go back, because he was in the state legislature, and do some schmoozing and sort of catching up and arm slapping, back slapping, arm shaking, and so on, handshaking. Is he a potential candidate, number one? Does he have a legitimate chance?
I think he's running.
Okay.
I think he's running because
I gave you that big buildup.
He really believes that he has the base in the Republican Party. He is extremely conservative, as you know. And I think he feels that he has the base here in Florida and he could run. And I think these are the first steps in the campaign. I think that he'll definitely run, and he'll be a very, very strong far-right candidate for governor.
Well, why would he run? He's made a name for himself in Congress as a bit of a firebrand.
Yeah.
Why would he leave that post that has potential of moving on to a higher position within the House of Representatives, maybe even the Senate, to run for governor?
He's not going anywhere in the House, Frank. He's not going anywhere in the Senate. Because most of
you think he knows that
many of the people in the House and the Senate don't like him, who are Republicans. We're not talking about Democrats here. He is a firebrand. He is a problem within the Republican Party. So he needs to think about what's good for himself. Running for the gubernatorial race here in Florida, that makes more sense for him, probably.
Is it too soon to be thinking about 26? Granted, it's 2 years away. Nikki Fried is the Democrat who's sort of talked about running as well. Is it too early, or you need to start right now?
I think it's a little early. But I think there are a number of candidates who might be considered on the Democratic side. I think that's an open question right now, but it's a little too early, I think.
All right. Also happening this week, an appeals court struck down parts of Ron DeSantis in the legislature's Stop Woke Act. We've discussed this. It's often referred to as the Don't Say Gay bill.
Right.
It was problematic from the beginning, and the appeals court agrees. Of course, they think this will probably end up in the Supreme Court.
Well, this whole law, this whole thinking, if you will, the psychology of this really reminds me of like a grand political stunt, if you will, okay? Because what this is really doing is promoting this notion that there are these liberals, there are these people who are woke, and we don't like them. The law itself doesn't make a lot of good sense, and when it goes through the court system, it's probably not going to gain much traction there either. It doesn't make a lot of sense for those people who are moderate to left. And even for some conservatives, I think they have a problem with this whole thing on woke.
We had the discussion during the editorial meeting. Is Florida really leaning red, becoming more red? Or were the congressional districts designed in such a way that we would get more Republican congresspeople? And listen, give props to DeSantis. He won big. He won big last time. But maybe 2 years from now it's a different story.
Frank, that is a big question. And I think that what's going to happen here as we go forward in the next year or two, we're going to see what Florida looks like. Obama won here twice. Things have changed. It may go back the other way. It may not. But a big question. We're going to find out a lot about where Florida stands soon.
It is yet to be seen.
Yes.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the always popular sunshine or shower segment, when we see who enjoyed the warm rays of sunshine this week and who got caught in a downpour, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. As you know, the weather can change in a moment in Florida, so every week we span the state to find out who enjoyed the sunshine and who got caught in the rain. It's time for the always popular sunshine or shower segment. Let's start with the sunshine, because we have most of that, right? So who's in the sunshine this week?
Well, Frank, I'm putting Disney in the sunshine this week, and the reason is that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars in Florida to expand. They seem to be moving past all of these political issues and commentary about them, some good, some not so good. They're expanding here in Florida. They've really been great for Florida overall. They've provided many, many jobs, tens of thousands of jobs, and more to come. So I think they really deserve to be in the sunshine. They had a really good quarter last quarter, and I think they're doing well. So I'll put them in there.
But they have bumped heads with DeSantis, as you know. So.
But they're moving on, and they're just growing the business and looking pretty good.
Okay, and this is the moment that you ask me.
Who do you have now, Frankens?
Going back to what we discussed a little while ago, I have to give props to the city of Miami, the governor. Yeah, listen, we went on spring break when we were in college. We had some fun. But sometimes it gets out of hand.
Yes.
And sometimes you need some control of what's going on because, let's face it, kids drunk, whatever.
Yeah.
They could trash a city. So I am going to put the city of Miami
Good.
in the sunshine this week because they understand what's coming, they're preparing for it, and maybe we can have controlled chaos this year as opposed to just chaos. So Miami in the sunshine.
Some good planning.
Now you know every sunshiny day it rained last night, came down. I didn't hear it. The bride told me, but it rained last night in the middle of the night. So it happens sometimes. You get some showers. So who is in the showers?
Well, Frank, as per my rant today, all right, I have to put people in the Florida legislature who are going to vote for this bill to have religious counselors go into public school. As we've said many times, we're going to repeat ourselves here. This really is Sunday school in the public school. It's the opposite of separation of church and state. I don't see how it could pass, but it might. But I think anybody who votes for this should be in the showers.
And it certainly will be challenged. It's not like it's going to just happen.
Good point. I hadn't thought of that, but it probably will be challenged. Yes.
I've had discussions with friends about the separation of church and state. I think this falls into that category.
Absolutely.
Okay, now,
who are you placing in the shower?
just like we planned it.
Yeah.
It's terrific. You know, listen, I've held back way too long about it. We love our sponsors. We love the major chains. Great people. I have a problem, however, with self-checkout, and it's a real deep problem. I went into a store the other day. I bought something. I went to the counter, and he said, you could check yourself. I said, I don't want to check myself out. First of all, I don't work here, number one. Number two, you're standing there. Why can't you check me out? No, I'll help you check you. I said, by the way, not only are you doing this, but you're doing this, and eventually they're going to eliminate your job. So you understand that, right? I have a problem with self-checkout. I have seen it again and again. Even Walmart has said recently that people are fudging at the checkout counter and they're walking out with items. So their shoplifting has gone up. Listen, we've had a problem with the pandemic, getting employees, okay? We're in an automated age. I understand that. But, you know, without, and I've said this before, without one-on-one service, without personal service, you're Amazon.
Frank, I'm for the real person. I agree with you.
I am for and I think I'm in the majority on this.
I think you are.
Because I've talked to people, know I love it. I go there. It's terrific. It's wonderful. I'm in and out. I think I'm in the majority. I'd rather have somebody behind the counter taking care of me. I don't work for that.
I'm voting for you on this one.
That was a little bit of a Frank rant as opposed to a Rossi rant. All right, thank you, Doctor. Time for a break. When we come back, a commentary by yours truly titled, Let's Be Frank, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. With Super Tuesday behind us, it's looking like it will be a rematch of 2020. President Joe Biden against former President Donald Trump. One man is 77 years old, the other is 81. Now, you have heard me before on this show express my concerns about older men and women running for or clinging to political offices that they are no longer able to manage. Who can forget distinguished Senator Dianne Feinstein struggling to discharge her duties while dealing with a multitude of ailments which eventually took her life? Or Senate Leader Mitch McConnell freezing up on camera, not once, but twice, after suffering an earlier head injury. Politics is not for the weak or the elderly. In this fast-moving world, it requires, shall we say, a more vigorous mind and body. We have seen Mr. Trump repeatedly mix up the current occupant of the White House with his predecessor, referring to President Biden as President Obama, or mixing up Nikki Haley with former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We have also seen President Biden refer to the Egyptian president as the leader of Mexico, as well as other verbal stumbles. And these are just a few incidents in a series of brain burps by both men. Now, before the emails start coming in, I, like most likely many of you watching now, are from the baby boomer generation. And although I do a lot of reading, I don't profess to know exactly what the millennial generation or Gen Z is into. That is why I would encourage all those calling for term limits to instead call for age limits. As an example, let's say any man or woman over the age of 75 would be barred from running for Congress or the presidency. If that were the rule, we would now be deciding on an entirely new slate of candidates, those who understand more of what is happening at this moment in time, and not those who were born during a time when there were 48 states. We should not be crossing our fingers in the voting booth this year or any year, hoping that the man or woman we are electing will be of sound mind and body 4 years down the road. As we know all too well, Father Time is and remains undefeated. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine folks working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.